My name is Kristen Johnson, 32 years old. The group text came through at 9:23 a.m. on a Friday family dinner tonight at the Grandmont Hotel. 7:00 p.m. Nicholas booked the presidential suite. Dress appropriately. Mom. I stared at the message, coffee halfway to my lips. The Grandmont Hotel, my hotel. The one I'd purchased 11 months ago for $12.3 million when the previous owners had run it into the ground. The one I'd quietly revived, redesigned, and rebranded into one of the city's most sought-after boutique properties. The one my family had no idea I owned. I set my cup down and smiled, though it wasn't amusement that curved my mouth, it was anticipation. A dull, weary amusement that after all these years my parents and siblings still had no clue who I'd become. Opening my laptop, I logged into the internal system. A few keystrokes later, I saw it Presidential Suite, Nicholas Johnson, 3-night stay. Rate $2,800 a night. My older brother had chosen my hotel and paid full price for the privilege of dining on my marble floors beneath my chandeliers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I leaned back in my chair. Well, I thought this will be interesting. At 32, I'd grown used to being underestimated by my family. I was the youngest, the soft one, the girl who'd wasted her business degree on hospitality management. While Nicholas was a surgeon and Cassandra was a celebrated attorney, I had chosen hotels. According to my father, that made me a glorified receptionist in a nicer uniform. What they didn't know, because they never bothered to ask, was that I wasn't working in hotels anymore. I owned them. 4 properties across 3 states. Combined valuation, $43 million. Annual revenue, roughly $8 million. Not bad for the family disappointment. I glanced around my minimalist home office. Steel gray walls, clean lines, the faint scent of eucalyptus from the diffuser. I designed it myself, like everything else in my life, to be functional, not flashy. The opposite of Nicholas's loud success or my father's obsession with appearances. I'd learned early that my family measured worth by display, not substance. So I stopped displaying. I let them think I was ordinary. David, I said, calling my general manager. Miss Johnson came his steady voice. Good morning. How may I assist? I see a reservation for Nicholas Johnson in the presidential suite. Yes, checked in yesterday. Any concerns? He's my brother, I said simply. Family dinner in the suite tonight at 7. None of them know I own the place. A short pause. David had been in this business long enough to understand the weight beneath polite words. Understood. How would you like us to handle it? For now, just proceed as usual. I'll be attending the dinner. Let's see how the evening unfolds. Very well, I'll brief the staff discreetly. They'll be ready for anything. I smiled faintly. Thank you, David. After hanging up, I checked the hotel's metrics occupancy, up 34%, since acquisition guest satisfaction climbing from 3.2 to 4.7. The restaurant booked solid for weeks. Everything was thriving. Everything except perhaps my family's respect. I'd built my empire in silence because I'd learned that silence could be power. The quieter you became, the less people saw you coming. By late afternoon, I stood before my mirror, evaluating the woman staring back. My black dress was plain, unadorned. I'd picked it deliberately. Something my mother would call serviceable something. Nicholas would mock as basic. My hair was tied back neatly, no jewelry except for a modest gold bracelet. They'd look at me and see the same unremarkable girl they always had. That was the point. As I fastened my bracelet, I caught my reflection's faint smile. There was something almost cruel about my calm, not because I wanted revenge, but because I'd already won. They just didn't know it yet. The Grandmont gleamed when I arrived at 6:45 p.m. I parked in my reserved owner's spot in the underground garage, a small detail Nicholas would probably assume belonged to some faceless corporate executive. Upstairs, the hotel's Art Deco facade glowed softly under the evening lights. The marble floors shimmered beneath chandeliers I'd chosen from a boutique craftsman in Italy. Every inch of this place carried my fingerprint, and tonight my family would unknowingly sit in my creation and judge me for not being successful. David met me near the private hallway that led to my office. His usual professionalism carried a hint of concern. Your family arrived 20 minutes ago, he said quietly. Your brother has made several requests. Such as additional champagne, early room service, and he asked if we could move the thermostat controls into the suite. Said the air was too still. When informed that climate systems are centrally managed, he implied you could override them. I arched a brow. He did. Yes. He told the staff, quote, "My sister works here. She can fix it." A laugh escaped before I could stop it dry and humorless. Of course he did. Also, David added, he's been somewhat dismissive. Not overtly rude, but the kind of guest who looks through people. That sounds like Nicholas, I murmured. Thank you for the warning. He hesitated. Would you like me to remain nearby during dinner? I shook my head. No, this is family business. But keep the staff alert, and if anything escalates, I'll signal. David inclined his head. Understood. And Miss Johnson? Yes. Whatever happens tonight, he said, a small smile touching his lips, you deserve every ounce of satisfaction. For the first time that day, I allowed a real smile to break through. Let's hope I don't need it. As the elevator doors closed, I watched my reflection in the mirrored panel. The hum of the lift was soft, almost meditative. My heartbeat, however, was steady, but charged, not fear, not exactly excitement either, but something more complicated. The kind of anticipation that comes before an overdue storm. When the doors opened onto the top floor, I heard them before I saw them. Mom's laugh, Dad's booming commentary, Cassandra's clipped sarcasm, Nicholas's confident baritone dominating them all. The doors to the presidential suite were wide open, lights spilling into the hallway. I paused just outside, smoothing my dress, taking one deep breath. 10 years of being underestimated. 10 years of swallowing quiet humiliation at every family gathering. 10 years of letting them believe I was less. Tonight that illusion would end. I stepped through this doorway and 4 familiar faces turned toward me. Kristen Mom's tone carried both surprise and instant judgment as her gaze swept my outfit. Oh, is that what you're wearing? Hello, Mom, I said, voice even. Nicholas lifted a glass of champagne and grinned. Hey, little sister. Perfect timing. It's like a sauna in here. Can you tell someone to fix the temperature? You work here, right? I smiled polite but sharp at the edges. I'll see what I can do. He laughed, turning back to the bar. Perks of having family in the service industry. Cassandra emerged from the bedroom phone in hand, designer heels clicking on the marble. Kristen's still working at this hotel. God, you've been loyal. I met her gaze steady. Something like that. Dad, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gestured toward the city lights. Magnificent view, isn't it? This is what real success looks like, Kristen. Hard work, achievement, recognition. You could learn from your brother. I smiled faintly. My pulse calm now, my voice quiet but cutting. Maybe I already have. They didn't notice the weight behind it, not yet, but by the end of the night, they would. The room smelled faintly of bergamot and polished leather, a scent I'd chosen personally when designing the presidential suite. It was meant to feel like power cloaked in subtlety. Fitting then that my family was sitting right in the middle of it, blind to the irony. Come sit, dear, Mom said, gesturing to a chair near hers. You must be exhausted after a long shift. I smiled, controlled. Actually, I just got here. Nicholas chuckled from across the room, loosening his tie. She's probably been checking people in all day, Mom. Let her rest. I'll handle the ordering. We'll make sure she eats well for once. Cassandra laughed lightly, crossing one leg over the other. Just don't let her pick the wine, Nick. She probably knows the house options better than the reserves. Their voices layered over each other, warm in tone, cruel in subtext. The words hit like invisible paper cuts. Years ago, they would have stung. Tonight, I just let them glide past, observing instead of absorbing. Dad cleared his throat, lifting his champagne. To success, he declared. To hard work and ambition. To Nicholas and Cassandra, proof that drive pays off. The crystal glasses clinked. I raised mine too because refusing would only start a conversation I wasn't ready to have. Yet, the champagne was Veuve Clicquot La Grande Dame, $400 a bottle. Excellent choice, Nicholas. Or rather excellent taste in something I'd selected for my hotel's premium menu. The servers entered moving quietly. Every gesture was practiced linen napkins folded just so silverware aligned perfectly. They knew who I was, but not a single glance betrayed it. David's staff was well-trained. Loyalty, after all, was an investment. Cassandra looked around the room with visible approval. This is gorgeous. Who owns this place again? Some investment group, Nicholas replied without hesitation. Probably one of those faceless conglomerates that buy properties and flip them. Still, they did a good job. My fingers brushed the edge of the tablecloth on 200 thread count Egyptian cotton. Yeah, I murmured. They really did. Nicholas poured himself more champagne. Dad, you should have seen the lobby. You'd appreciate it, total old money vibe. Clearly the owner knows how to impress. Dad nodded. eyes glinting. It's good to see craftsmanship still matters. You can tell when a place has class. Thank you, I thought dryly. I'll pass your compliments on to myself. Sweetheart, Mom said, turning back to me. How's work? Still at the front desk. I'm in management, I answered evenly. Oh, wonderful. Her voice brightened, the kind of forced enthusiasm parents reserve for children they can't quite brag about. Do you get good benefits, paid vacation? Cassandra smirked. And discounts on suites like this, I hope. Before I could respond, Nicholas chimed in. You know, you really should think long-term, Kristen. Hospitality is fine for now, but you can't climb too far in service industries. There's a ceiling. Is that right? I asked, tilting my head. He nodded with the confidence of a man who'd never doubted his own importance. Sure. You can't scale service work. You don't own anything. You just work for people who do. For a moment, I said nothing. Just studied his reflection in the glass wall behind him. The skyline framing his outline, his own ego illuminated by city light. He looked so certain, so invincible in his own bubble of self-assurance. I took a slow sip of champagne and smiled. That's an interesting theory. David's voice came quietly from the doorway. Good evening, everyone. I'm David Richardson, the general manager. I just wanted to personally ensure everything is perfect tonight. Nicholas didn't even look up from his phone. You can start by fixing the temperature. It's too warm in here. David inclined his head. Our systems are optimized for guest comfort, sir, but I'll verify the settings. Just do it, Nicholas said, waving him off. David's eyes flickered to mine, calm and professional. Of course, sir. He exited soundlessly. Mom sighed, as though managing Nicholas was a full-time job. He's been working so hard lately. His hospital just made him attending. They gave him a parking spot with his name on it. Cassandra clapped her hands. That's amazing, Nick. You're officially the family star now. He grinned modestly. Oh, I don't know about star. Please, I said before I could stop myself. You've been practicing that speech all night. Silence fell for half a heartbeat. Then Nicholas laughed. Still the sarcastic one, I see. Dad chuckled too, easing the tension. Sarcasm's a sign of intelligence, right? Though in your case, Kristen, I wish you'd focus that intelligence on your career. I set my glass down carefully. What do you mean? I mean, Dad said, lowering his voice, you're 32. No husband, no children, no house. You're, what do they call it, floating. Mom nodded sympathetically. We just worry, dear. You've always had such a kind heart, but kindness doesn't build stability. Kindness, right. That was the polite word they used when they meant soft. Nicholas leaned back in his chair. You could have gone to med school, you know. You were smart enough. Dad would have helped. I didn't want to go to med school. Law school, then. Cassandra could have pulled strings. I didn't want that either. He shrugged. Then I guess you chose your path, but it's not too late to change. Why would I want to? I asked quietly. Cassandra rolled her eyes. Because you're working for other people, Kristen. Don't you ever get tired of serving? You should be the one giving orders. I almost laughed. If only you knew. But instead, I looked down at my plate. Serving isn't the worst thing in the world, I said softly. It teaches you who people really are. That comment landed heavier than they realized. Nicholas frowned, but before he could respond, a young server approached with the main course pan-seared ribeye with truffle mash. Perfectly plated. The smell alone was intoxicating. Your steak, ma'am, he said, setting the dish in front of me. Then, realizing who I was, his eyes flicked up briefly. Recognition flashing before he looked away. Enjoy your meal. Thank you, I said, holding his gaze just long enough to reassure him it's okay. The moment passed, but Nicholas caught it. Interesting, he said, smirking. Looks like you're popular with the staff. I smiled faintly. Some people appreciate good management. He snorted. Or maybe they just pity you. Nick Mom chided half-heartedly, though the corners of her mouth twitched with amusement. The conversation drifted back to Nicholas's hospital stories and Cassandra's latest courtroom triumphs. I listened in silence, letting their self-congratulation fill the room. It was almost soothing now, predictable, rehearsed. When the plates were cleared, Dad lifted his glass again. To family, he said. Even when some of us take unconventional paths. They all laughed politely. I didn't. My fingers traced the condensation ring on my napkin. The wine sparkled under the chandelier, the same chandelier I'd chosen months ago, because its crystals reminded me of rain of clarity. Dad, I said suddenly, voice calm, almost conversational. Do you know what I actually do? He blinked. You work in hotels. Doing what? Mom frowned. Managing, I think. Specifically, I pressed. Cassandra waved a hand. Kristen, why are you being cryptic? You work at a hotel. You've said it 1,000 times. I smiled, the kind that hides fire behind its calm. Right, I've said it. You just never listened. The silence that followed wasn't angry, yet just puzzled. The kind of silence before the temperature in a room changes. And it did, because at that very moment there was a knock at the suite door. David stood there, again composed but formal this time. "Mr. Johnson," he said, addressing Nicholas. "May I have a private word?" Nicholas, already halfway through his drink, gestured lazily. "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of my family." David nodded once. "Very well, sir." And that was when the air in the room, heavy with champagne and unspoken judgments, began to shift just slightly toward reckoning. David's calm tone contrasted sharply with the rising hum of discomfort at the table. The clink of cutlery stopped. Even the background music seemed to fade. "Mr. Johnson," he said evenly, "I've received multiple reports from staff regarding your behavior during your stay." Nicholas blinked, startled. "Excuse me." David continued, every syllable precise. "Several employees have described your manner as dismissive and condescending. One server noted you snapped your fingers at him. Another reported you referring to housekeeping as cleaning people." Nicholas straightened in his seat, color rising to his cheeks. I don't know what you're talking about. I was polite. Firm, maybe, but polite." Cassandra frowned. "David Wright, are you sure this isn't some misunderstanding?" David inclined his head. "I assure you, ma'am, we verify all complaints before escalation." Dad's tone sharpened, protective. "Now hold on. My son's a doctor. He deals with people all day long. Maybe someone took offense where none was intended." David didn't flinch. "Our staff is trained to handle demanding guests, but we also expect mutual respect. The owner has instructed me to address such matters directly." "Then get the owner on the phone," Nicholas snapped. "I'll deal with them personally." David turned his gaze toward me. Calm, steady, knowing. "The owner," he said softly, "is already here." My family's heads swiveled toward me almost in unison. Mom blinked, first, confusion creasing her forehead. "What does he mean, dear?" I rose slowly from my chair. Every motion deliberate, measured. "It means," I said, voice quiet, but cutting through the air like a blade, "that this is my hotel." For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. "What?" Nicholas laughed high, incredulous. "No, come on, that's not—" "I bought the Grandmont 11 months ago," I said, steady, "for $12.3 million. Paid in full. My company, Johnson Hospitality Group, owns it." Cassandra's glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's face went pale, the kind of pale that only comes from ego meeting reality head on. Mom finally managed to whisper, "That's impossible." David, professional to the end, tapped on his tablet and turned the screen toward them. Ownership records registered under Johnson Hospitality Group. Sole proprietor, Ms. Kristen Johnson. Nicholas snatched the tablet, scanning it with growing disbelief. No, this has to be wrong. You don't have that kind of money." I smiled faintly. "Apparently I do." He looked up sharply. "You're telling me you bought a hotel just like that?" "Not just like that," I replied. "It took years. I started with the Maritime Inn, small coastal property, bought it for $1.8 million, spent 2 years turning it around, then leveraged that equity to acquire more. Now I own 4 hotels across 3 states." Silence. Only the soft hiss of the air vents filled the space Nicholas had once dominated. Dad cleared his throat, voice low and dangerous. Why wouldn't you tell us?" I met his eyes. "Because you never asked." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" I asked quietly. "For 10 years, every time I tried to talk about my work, one of you changed the subject. You laughed when I said I wanted to run my own company. You told me hospitality was just serving people with nicer napkins." Mom's lips parted, trembling. "We were only trying to help. We didn't want you to waste your potential." "By doing something I love," I asked. "You saw service industry and assumed failure. You never even tried to see me." Nicholas finally found his voice. "You could have told us. You could have." "I did," I interrupted. "Thanksgiving 4 years ago, I said I was looking at buying a small hotel. Dad told me, 'That's nice, dear. Pass the potatoes.' 2 Christmases later, I mentioned closing on the Maritime Inn. You asked if that meant I was cleaning rooms now." Cassandra's jaw tightened. "You're making it sound like we ignored you on purpose." "Didn't you?" I asked. For a moment, no one could look at me. David shifted slightly, professional discretion, tugging him toward the exit. "Ms. Johnson, shall I?" "It's fine, David," I said. "You can leave us." He gave a small nod, understanding the kind of battlefield this had become, and left quietly. I turned back to my family. You all sat here tonight sipping $400 champagne, the same champagne I hand-selected for the hotel's cellar and told me I'd never own anything. You said I'd chosen mediocrity. Dad's voice was harsh, now defensive. You made us look like fools, Kristen. I laughed softly and credulously. No, Dad. You did that yourselves. I just stopped correcting you. Mom's eyes were glossy with tears she didn't want to shed. Why keep it a secret? Why this performance? It wasn't a performance, I said, quieter now. It was self-preservation. I learned that when people only value you for status, sometimes the only way to stay sane is to let them underestimate you. The truth landed heavy. Cassandra looked down at her plate. Nicholas set his drink aside, hands trembling slightly. He exhaled. I was an ass tonight, wasn't I? Yes, I said simply. To his credit, he didn't argue. The air in the suite felt denser, like the walls themselves were listening. My family, so used to being the center of every conversation, suddenly didn't know where to put their eyes. Dad finally spoke quieter now. 43 million, he murmured, almost to himself. How? How did we miss it? I thought about answering, about explaining how success built in silence doesn't make noise, but instead I said, because you weren't looking for me. You were looking for proof that I'd failed. That shut him up. I sank back into my chair. My pulse had slowed again. I felt empty in a strange way. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just clear. Cassandra broke the silence. Kristen, this is incredible. Truly, I had no idea. Her tone was sincere, almost tender. For the first time that evening, there was something in her voice that resembled respect. I gave a small nod. Thank you. Nicholas rubbed his forehead, eyes lowered. I guess I've been preaching success to someone who could buy my hospital if she wanted to. Don't worry, I said. Your job is safe. That even made Mom laugh weakly through her tears. Dad was still standing near the window, watching the city lights glitter against the glass. You should have told us sooner, he said finally. Would it have mattered, I asked. Would you have believed me, or would you have told me it wasn't real success unless it came with a title you approved of? He didn't answer. For a moment, the family that had always been so loud, so certain, sat quiet, stunned into reflection. Then softly I added, you wanted to speak to the owner, Nicholas. Now you have. He looked up. What happens now? I gave him a long look. Now I said you start treating my staff with respect. And maybe, just maybe, you start seeing people for more than what they appear to be. The sound of the city below, distant sirens, traffic, the hum of life, filled the silence that followed. In that moment, I realized something important. The power I'd always wanted wasn't about money or revenge. It was the ability to stand in front of the people who once belittled me and no longer need their approval. The silence stretched elastic and uneasy until even the air conditioning hum seemed too loud. My father's reflection in the window wavered proud, commanding but suddenly small in the glass. My mother sat with her hands folded too tightly in her lap, knuckles white. Cassandra's eyes were still on me, but softer now, like she was trying to memorize the version of her sister she'd never bothered to see before. Nicholas finally exhaled, breaking the tension with a shaky laugh. This is insane, he muttered. Kristen, you expect us to believe you've been building some empire in secret. 4 hotels, 8 million in revenue. That's not something people just do. I tilted my head, my tone mild. You mean it's not something you thought I could do? That's not, he began, but I didn't let him finish. I didn't expect you to believe it. I just expected you to stop talking long enough to listen. The words landed harder than I intended. Even Cassandra's smirk faltered. Mom swallowed her voice, trembling. But sweetheart, why hide it? Why not share your success with us? We could have celebrated with you. I met her eyes, because every time I tried to share anything that didn't fit your version of success, you dismissed it. Do you remember when I got my first management position? You said, that's cute, but when are you going to get a real job? Mom's lips parted, searching for a defense. None came. I worked for the Blackstone Group back then. I continued quietly. I was managing hotel operations across the state. I made $285,000 a year. Dad turned from the window, stunned. That's more than Nicholas. Yes, I said, but that didn't matter, did it? You never asked what I earned, what I built, what I sacrificed. You just saw the job title and decided it was beneath your expectations. Nicholas set down his glass, his arrogance peeling away in layers. You were right, he admitted, voice lower now. We didn't care to ask. Cassandra let out a quiet laugh, one that sounded like disbelief laced with admiration. I can't decide whether to be ashamed or impressed. Try both, I said a little too sharply. Dad turned fully now, his tone strained. You made us look like fools in front of each other. No, I said, meeting his gaze. I made you see yourselves for the first time. The words hung there raw and unpolished. I hadn't planned to say them, but once they were out, they couldn't be taken back. Mom's eyes glistened. You could have told us gently, not like this. Not here. Here is perfect, I replied, my calm returning. You wanted to celebrate Nicholas's success in a place that screamed status, crystal chandeliers, imported marble, $700 dinners. You wanted to toast ambition while mocking mine. Tell me what's more poetic than realizing this room, this entire experience, belongs to the daughter you called a disappointment. The weight of that landed like a thunderclap. Nicholas looked away first. Cassandra bit her lip, her usual confidence faltering. Dad's jaw clenched, as if pride alone could armor him against humiliation. I sank back into my seat and reached for my wine. You all sat here tonight talking about ownership, about who builds and who serves. Funny how easily you confuse visibility with success. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Cassandra broke the silence, her tone quiet, thoughtful. Kristen, when did you stop trying to make us proud? I smiled faintly. The day I realized I didn't need to. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. You don't mean that. I do, I said. For years, I tried to prove myself in ways you'd notice, but you only noticed when it reflected well on you. The minute my life didn't fit the mold, the degree, the job title, the husband, you stopped seeing me altogether. Nicholas leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice low. And what about now? Are you happy? That question caught me off guard. Happiness. A strange word from his mouth, the man who measured worth in metrics and status. I'm proud, I said after a pause. That's not quite the same as happy, but it's close enough. He nodded, slowly, eyes downcast. Then maybe I should take a page from your book. Cassandra glanced between us, her sharp wit softened into something almost gentle. You realize, Kristen, this is the most civil family dinner we've had in years. Mom gave a shaky laugh, only because we're too shocked to argue. Even Dad cracked a reluctant smile. I'll admit, he muttered, it takes guts to pull something like this off. I raised a brow. You mean telling the truth? He met my gaze, something grudgingly respectful in his expression. No. Building something this big and never once bragging about it. That takes restraint. It was as close to an apology as I was ever going to get. David reappeared at the door, discreet as ever. Ms. Johnson, he said, bowing slightly. Everything in order. Yes, thank you, I replied, my tone softening. Nicholas stood abruptly. David, he said awkwardly, I owe your staff an apology. I wasn't at my best. David nodded politely. Appreciated, sir. I'll pass that along. After he left the room, exhaled as though a storm had passed, but there was still something unsaid, a quiet unease beneath the calm. Mom leaned forward, voice trembling. Sweetheart, you're not angry at us, are you? I admitted. For a long time. Not anymore. I've just stopped expecting things you don't have to give. Dad frowned. And what's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, I finally stopped needing your approval to believe I've done something worthwhile. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Nicholas sank back into his chair, shaking his head. You really blindsided us. Consider it a reality check, I said. On the house. That earned a small, reluctant chuckle from him, the first genuine one all evening. The dinner plates had long gone cold, but nobody cared. The tension had melted into something else now, fragile, understanding, maybe even respect, though they wouldn't say it aloud. Cassandra broke the silence with a soft sigh. So, what now? Do we finish dinner, pretending none of this happened? Sure, I said. Why not? The food's excellent. I hired the chef myself. They laughed, uncertain but real. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like mockery. As the conversation stumbled back to life, I realized something unexpected. The power I felt wasn't from proving them wrong. It came from no longer needing to. And somewhere deep down, beneath all the bruised pride and awkward silence, I sensed the faintest flicker of change. For the first time in a long while, my family was truly seeing me, not as the youngest, or the failure, or the girl behind the front desk. Just me. The laughter didn't last. It wilted as soon as the next silence took its place. One of those silences that feel alive, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Outside the panoramic windows, the city glowed gold and violet, but inside, everything was tinted in uncertainty. Dad rose from his chair and walked back to the window, his hands behind his back, a posture I'd known since childhood, the stance he took when he was about to lecture. You know, he said slowly, without turning, I can't decide if I'm impressed or disappointed. Mom's head snapped toward him. Disappointed Henry. No, let him speak, I said quietly. He turned. Then his reflection sliding over the glass. You had something extraordinary, Kristen. You built this empire fine, but instead of sharing it with your family, you made us feel like fools. I didn't flinch. You made yourselves feel that way. His voice hardened. You think this is noble, hiding your success just to shock us? What purpose does that serve? I set my napkin down carefully. Maybe it serves as proof that you only respect what you can see. You raised us to believe worth had a uniform, a title, a paycheck, a parking spot. When I didn't fit you, decided I didn't succeed. All I did was stop correcting you. Mom reached across the table, her voice breaking. Sweetheart, please, this is all so much. We never meant to hurt you. I looked at her. You didn't mean to, but you did. Cassandra sighed, folding her arms. All right, everyone, enough. Can we not turn this into another Johnson family trial? For once, maybe we just listen. She looked at me genuinely for the first time. Kristen, tell us. Why did you keep it secret, really? Her tone was calm, not accusatory, so I answered honestly. Because when I started, no one believed I could. And then when I did, I realized I didn't need your belief anymore. You can't miss what you stopped depending on. Nicholas rubbed his temples. We were awful to you, weren't we? You were predictable, I said. There's a difference. He gave a small, rueful laugh. You could have at least let me book the suite at a discount. I couldn't help smiling. Consider the full rate a lesson in humility. Mom tried to smile too, but her voice wavered. I suppose we deserved that. Dad wasn't laughing. His pride was still a tangible thing, fragile, splintering, under the weight of realization. You've made your point, he said finally. So what now? You cut us off. Let this be the last time we see you. The question lingered, more vulnerable than I expected. No, I said softly, but maybe next time you see me as I am not as you need me to be. Cassandra stood, then taking her glass and moving to the window beside him. Dad, you're missing it, she said. This isn't about embarrassment. It's about her finally getting to exist outside of your expectations. He frowned defensive. You did, she interrupted gently. We all did. We treated her like the family intern even when she outgrew us years ago. Nicholas chuckled faintly. She outgrew us the moment she stopped needing our approval. Mom wiped her eyes. Oh, stop sounding so proud of being wrong. He smiled at her sadly. Maybe being wrong is the only thing that makes sense right now. I wanted to tell them it didn't matter anymore, that the resentment had burned itself out years ago. But the truth was more complicated. Some wounds don't bleed, they calcify. I don't want apologies, I said finally. I just wanted honesty. You can't fix 10 years of silence with a single dinner, but you can start with respect. Nicholas nodded. You'll have it. Cassandra lifted her glass toward me. To Kristen, she said softly, the sister we underestimated. Mom hesitated, then joined in. To Kristen. Dad, after a pause that felt eternal, lifted his own glass. To the one who proved us all wrong. The clinking of crystal felt strange, not celebratory, but cleansing like a soft exhale after years of holding breath. For a fleeting moment, I believed things might shift. Maybe not completely, but enough. Then Dad spoke again. Still, you could stand to be a little more transparent next time. Cassandra groaned. Dad, for God's sake. But I just smiled standing. Some habits die hard. That's all right. So do mine. They all watched as I reached for my clutch. Where are you going? Mom asked. Home, I said simply. Dinner's been enlightening. Mom rose too. Please stay. Let's talk this through. I shook my head gently. We just did. Nicholas frowned. You can't leave like this. I can actually, I said and smiled faintly. I'm the owner. That earned a laugh, genuine, startled even from Dad. It softened the air just enough for me to slip out without bitterness. In the hallway, David was waiting near the elevator posture, straight expression, neutral, but knowing. How did it go? He asked quietly. I exhaled, about as expected. A mix of shock, guilt, and faint admiration. He smiled. A family cocktail. Exactly. I pressed the elevator button. They'll stay the night, right? Of course. And I've reminded the staff impeccable service no matter the guest. Good, I said. Let them enjoy their stay. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. I stepped inside, turning back for a moment. Oh, David. Yes, Ms. Johnson. If Nicholas complains again about the temperature, David's eyes glinted with humor. I'll tell him the climate system is responding to the owner's settings. I grinned. Perfect. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection once more, calm, poised. A faint smile playing at my lips. For years, I'd imagined this confrontation as a thunderstorm. In the end, it felt more like a quiet evening rain, steady, necessary cleansing. And as the elevator descended, I realized something I hadn't before. Sometimes vindication isn't loud. It's the silence after the storm when the people who never saw you finally can't look away. The following morning, the city was wrapped in fog. Soft gray light bleeding through my office windows, muting the skyline into a watercolor haze. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to make me restless, but now felt like peace. A half-empty glass of champagne sat on my desk from last night. I hadn't had the heart to pour it out. The bubbles had gone flat, but I liked looking at it, a small reminder of victory, of restraint, of everything that finally surfaced after years of pretending. My phone buzzed, a message from David. Your family checked out early. Said something about needing time to reflect. Do you want me to process the refund? I stared at the text for a moment before typing back. Yes, full refund. Let's end it cleanly. I could almost picture them, Nicholas carrying himself with forced dignity, Cassandra walking briskly with her sunglasses on indoors, Mom holding Dad's arm in silence. No confrontation, no farewell, just quiet retreat. That was their way. When reality didn't fit their narrative, they simply left the room. I leaned back in my chair and took a slow breath. For years, I'd imagined this day would feel triumphant, cinematic, satisfying, filled with applause in my mind's theater. But it didn't. It felt still, like the calm that comes not after victory, but understanding. I turned on the security feed out of habit. The lobby camera showed my family clustered near the revolving doors. Mom was talking softly, her eyes red. Nicholas was staring down at his phone, expression unreadable. Cassandra was the one who looked up, scanning the lobby, like she could sense I was watching. Her gaze flicked toward the camera for just a second, and then she smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile. Then they stepped through the doors and disappeared into the fog. I closed the feed. For a long while, I just sat there, the faint hum of the city rising through the windows, the muted rhythm of footsteps in the hallway outside. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full. Then my phone buzzed again. This time an unfamiliar number. Cassandra, I got your number from Mom. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. What you've built is extraordinary. I don't know how I didn't see it before. I read the message twice before replying. Me, thank you. That means more than you know. 3 dots appeared, then another message. Cassandra, can we have coffee sometime? I want to hear about your work. Really hear about it this time. That one made me pause. Cassandra didn't do vulnerability. I smiled faintly and typed back. Me, I'd like that. For a few minutes, I just stared at the message thread. Simple words that somehow carried the weight of a decade. A door that had been locked for years, now cracked open, just a sliver, but enough. A new message appeared, this one from Nicholas. Nicholas, I was an ass last night. Probably for the last 10 years, too. You were right about everything. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care I did, but because some apologies needed time to land before they could mean anything. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the proposal I'd been reviewing before last night's chaos, the Austin Grand, a struggling property downtown. Good bones, prime location, bad management. The kind of challenge I thrived on. Numbers filled the screen: purchase price, renovation cost, projected ROI. It grounded me instantly. This was where I belonged. Not in family dramas, but in the work that made me feel alive. As I typed up the acquisition offer, $6.8 million, all cash, closed in 45 days, my mind drifted back to that dinner. To Mom's trembling smile, to Cassandra's hesitant respect, to Dad's pride hidden behind anger, and to Nicholas, for once, speechless. Maybe one day we'd have another dinner. Maybe the tone would be different. Or maybe it wouldn't. Either way, I was done waiting for validation that never came when I needed it most. I hit send. The offer left my inbox with a soft ping. Outside my window, the fog had begun to lift, the city sharpening into focus again. David knocked gently on the door. Ms. Johnson. Yes. I spoke with accounting. Refund has been processed. Also. He hesitated, then smiled. The staff wanted me to tell you how proud they are. They heard everything. I chuckled. Of course they did. They said, he continued, they've never seen someone handle family with more grace. I looked down at the desk, embarrassed but touched. Tell them thank you. And give them the rest of the day off. On me. David's smile widened. You're a good boss. Depends on who you ask, I said wryly. When he left, I poured the last of the champagne into my glass and stepped to the window. The light was shifting now, clearer, brighter, slicing through the fog like revelation. I raised the glass toward the skyline. To ownership, I murmured, of hotels, of mistakes of myself. The champagne was flat, but it didn't matter. It still tasted like victory, quiet, hard-earned, and entirely mine. My phone buzzed again, this time with a single text from Cassandra. Cassandra, proud of you. I smiled. Then, almost without thinking, I typed a reply. Me, finally. Outside, the city pulsed with new light reflections glittering on the glass like 1,000 small affirmations. They finally saw me. But the truth was, I'd been here all along,